This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also for the most part unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 37th time ever, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reviewing Network Live. I've got gum in my mouth right now, so that might explain why it might sound a little like something in my mouth, because there is something in my mouth. It's gum. And I'm just coming back from the festivities for Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. I hope you had a good day with your mothers out there. It was the first Mother's Day without my grandmother here, so we went to a new place for Mother's Day than we usually do, because usually we go over to my grandmother's place, but of course that's no longer in the cards anymore for obvious reasons. But I hope you all had a really good Mother's Day, and yeah, to all the lovely mothers out there, happy Mother's Day to you too. And if you are one of those mothers who are watching the show, hello, I didn't think you'd be interested in this, but anyway, I'm just rambling on here because we have a packed show for you this week, as we usually do here, or try to at least do, but it's going to be very similar to last week, though. A couple of stories are very similar with specific people from last week and this week's stories, but before we get to those stories, let's go ahead and do what we always do. Let's begin the conversation by taking a look at the weekend box office, and not really much of a surprise what ended up where. And the first couple here we can get through pretty quickly because they're films we've talked about in the past already. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll start with the number 5 films. Hanging on to number 5 from last week is Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, which brought in $2.5 million this week, dropping 44% from last week, bringing its gross up to $191.8 million after 7 weeks here in the U.S., but worldwide it's closing in on $560 million, $558.7 million worldwide. Again, not much more to really say about that one, except that is one of the big hits of the year, easily. Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. I think this week they've got a writer. They're getting writers for the new Godzilla, for the next film of this series, and I can't wait to see it because I really like the last film. So that brings us now to number 4, which is a film that is kind of there just because there's literally nothing else out to really take it out of there, and that is Taro, which opened in that same spot last week, dropped 47% from last week down to $3.4 million, bringing it to its $12 million. Worldwide, it's up to $20 million, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, was the overall budget of the film. So if that's the case, then this thing probably made its money back already. And actually, no, it's already doubled its budget to $8 million. So yeah, it already made its money back, so it could just now go take whatever profits it has and create direct-to-DVD sequels, or in this case, probably sequels that will eventually go to the big screen because it's Screen Gems. But I digress. Let's move on to number 3. Excuse me. Which, of course, brings us now to number 3 again. That is Challengers, which is number 3 from last week as well. $4.7 million, dropping 38% from last week. It's close up now. It's $38 million, $38.1 million in the States after 3 weeks. Worldwide, it's up to $68 million, which the budget on this was $55 million, so it at least made its budget back. I don't think it's going to make its money back domestically, but that should not take away from the fact that it is really one of the best movies of the year. And you can also say the argument there is there for the number 2 movie this week, which is The Fall Guy, which fell off a cliff. 50% drop off from last week, $13.7 million, $49.6 million after 2 weeks. The film has already passed $100 million worldwide, $103.7 million worldwide. I think the budget, I believe, was $140 million, if I'm not mistaken. So if it ends around $160 to $180 million worldwide, it'll at least make its budget back, but Universal cannot be happy with the way that this film was performed. I just think this was a big mistake to put a movie like this up on the big screen. It's not on the big screen, but just as the focal point of the being the first film of the summer movie season. Like, this is not a movie that should have be opening up the summer. This should be a movie that should have been closing out the summer. Like, I feel like if you put this out in August or September, I think this film would have done a whole lot better in terms of its financial gain, but it'll probably go on to have a following over the years, even if it doesn't hit the requirements that it should to at least get the budget back in general. But it was just a big mistake to make this the official starting point of the summer movie season, when the number one movie we're looking at this week could have easily been the first real big summer movie of the summer movie season, and that is, of course, the number one film, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which brought in $56.5 million. If you include worldwide numbers, it's already up to $129 million worldwide. The budget for this, I believe, somewhere around $100 million. That's my guess right now. I'm going to take a look now. It's a little more than that, $157 million, but it's going to make its money back through the worldwide money. Domestically, it'll be a more closer approach to it, but I just did a review for it today. I saw it yesterday. Really, really good movie. It's not quite as good as the other movies in the Planet of the Apes reboot series, but it's still a really damn good movie, and I think it will find some legs down the road, even though there's going to be stiff competition coming up for the rest of the month. But I, for one, really enjoyed the film, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with a sequel, because it looks like they're setting it up for a new trilogy of films by Wes Ball, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with it going forward. And it's weird, because when it comes to the Planet of the Apes, the highest grossing opening in the series is the Tim Burton film, the one that's terrible, which brought in $68 million back in 2001. And actually, let me take a look, because I thought Dawn of the Planet of the Apes did around 72 million, if I'm not mistaken. But let me double check real quick. Yeah, it was the biggest opening in the series. $72.6 million was what that movie made when it first came out, and that's still probably the best film of the reboot series. Like I said in my review, it goes back and forth between this and War for the Planet of the Apes, but some people may look at the opening weekend for this and say that, oh, it's not a good opening weekend for this. This is just not the opening that they should have for this, but I think people do generally still enjoy the film. I mean, it's done pretty well critically. It's got a cinema score of B on a, which usually means that it could go either way. It could either have legs, or it could kind of fall off, especially with competition coming up in the next couple of weeks. But I think that's a good opening for this movie, honestly. I think it's an opening that it's good for a couple reasons. One, Disney really needed a hit, because their plan for what they were going to do in the months without a big new release, the re-releases of Inside Out, not Inside Out, Turning Red, Luca, and Soul didn't work out well for them. The Alien release actually went pretty well, and the Star Wars release last week did pretty well, although this week it dropped 82% from last week. But still, it's spotted $12 million over 2 weeks with little marketing to it. So, this was really a good wake-up call for Disney, because this summer is going to be very important for them, because they've got 3 films. It's going to be sandwiched between 2 Fox films, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and then Deadpool and Wolverine, and you've got Inside Out 2 in the middle, and Inside Out 2 could be the one movie that, it might be the next movie that makes $100 million plus, if the word of mouth is good on that film, but we will see what happens. I'm definitely looking forward to those movies in particular, and I'm especially looking forward to the movies coming up next week, because we've got If, and we've also got Back to Black, which are 2 movies I was really looking forward to check out. And then there's also The Strangers Chapter 1, which, I don't know. The Strangers is supposed to be a 3-part film series, and it's Rennie Harlan handling it. It just seems kind of pointless. I mean, I don't know. Is there really a demand for it, too? That's the question. I think there's more of a demand for, John Krasinski's latest film, or the Amy Winehouse biopic, more than there is for this 3-part reboot trilogy of The Strangers. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do very well here. There's one other movie in particular that should be noted here. There was a new spoof movie coming out, because, we could say that we're done with, the Freeburg Seltzer movies, but Briarcliff Entertainment said, No, we want to do one with the church movie crowd. So here we go with Not Another Church Movie, which opened in 1,108 theaters and crashed and burned at the box office. $360,000, a per-screen average of $324. A movie that nobody had no interest in checking out whatsoever. It's got Mickey Rourke. It's got who else is in it? Jamie Foxx. Like, that's the biggest shock of all. It's just like, Jamie Foxx, what are you doing, man? Don't go down the Adrian Brody approach where you're starring in terrible spoof comedies like this. You've got Kevin Daniels, who's not Tyler Perry. No. Taylor. This name is so stupid. I can't even get it out. Taylor Ferry and Madude Hims. That should pretty much tell you everything you need to know about the comedy levels in this movie, which is the level, the status of the comedy here. It's not going to be good, and not surprisingly, it's crashed and burned with critics. It's crashed and burned at the box office, and we should not be hearing any more about this anytime soon. So, yeah, Naked Gun, the new Naked Gun movie and the new Scary Movie reboots. Please do us a favor and fix the spoof movies. Get us to completely forget about the terrible Friedberg Seltzer era. Just make us forget about movies like this, man. Please, for the love of God. So, with that said, that is the weekend box office. So let's just go ahead and jump right into the news stories we have this week. So the first news stories we have here, I wanted to wait until we got official confirmation that this was actually happening, because they've been talking about this for a number of months now, but now is official. There's going to be an Office follow-up series coming up, and it's going to be coming out on Peacock. I've got the story from the Hollywood Reporter here. Peacock on Wednesday afternoon announced a formal series order for the untitled series that is set in the same universe as NBC's former Emmy-winning Steve Carell comedy. The series, co-created by The Office's Greg Daniels and Nathan For co-creator Michael Coleman, will again be a mockumentary featuring Domhnall Gleeson from About Time and Ex Machina and Sabrina Impasior from The White Lotus, leading ensemble cast. Production on the show will begin in July. It's been more than 10 years since the final episode of The Office aired on NBC, and the acclaimed comedy series continues to gain popularity and build new generations of fans on Peacock, says Lisa Katz, president of NBC Universal Entertainment. In partnership with Universal Television, led by the creative team of Greg Daniels and Michael Coleman, the new series set in the universe of Dunder Mifflin introduces a new cast of characters and a fresh setting right for comedic storytelling, a daily newspaper. The documentary crew that immortalized Dunder Mifflin's Scranton branch is in the search for a new subject when they discover a dying historic Midwestern newspaper, and the publishers trying to revive it with voluntary reporters. The untitled mockumentary, which arrives at ABC has found Emmy Gold with Abbott Elementary, hails from the studio behind the former NBC favorite, Universal Television. So this is not the first time they tried to create a series in universe. I mean, they did this back with the Emmy with Parks and Recreation, which if you look back at the Super Bowl commercials for that year in 2009 when they first promoted this, they literally promoted it as a new series from the creator of The Office before it eventually became the show that would become Parks and Recreation. So who knows really if this is actually going to be a show that's going to be very similar to The Office in general. It sounds like it's definitely going to be that way, but of course, I really love The Office. I love the original series. I love the BBC series. I will say the American series is better. I was one of the few people that actually was around when it was watching it when it was on NBC. I mean, I started watching it right around season 3, season 4 is when I really started getting into it, because that was when NBC had the comedy lineup of, My Name Is Earl, Scrubs, The Office, and 30 Rock, and that was just more than enough for me to really get invested into that show because it was part of those great shows in general. So I was a big fan of the show from the very beginning, and I still think it holds up very well to this very day. I'm really excited to see what they do with this. I'm really curious to see how they're going to make this different, because they've tried to make spin-offs within the Office universe. I remember there was one that was actually an in-spin-off show that they were going to do called The Farm, that was going to take place on Dwight Schrute's Beat Farm. However, that show didn't really go anywhere, and it's just left over as a backdoor pilot within season 8, I think? Season 8? I don't think it was season 9, but they were kind of setting it up to be the show that was going to eventually be the replacement show for The Office when that went away. Kind of like how Frasier was a replacement show for Cheers. That type of thing. But, of course, that never really went anywhere. And for Peacock, I think it's a good move for them. I think it's a good idea to build this comedy lineup that you have here, because they've had some really good shows coming their way the last couple of years. Girls Five Ever was actually pretty good. Ted is amazing, the show that was just on this year, which was the continuation of the movies by Seth MacFarlane. Yeah, build as much as you can to get people to come to your streamer, because, I mean, it's really okay, I had to get that gum out of my mouth because it was already getting past the point where it was already more than time to put it in the trash. But what I was trying to say before is that Peacock needs to keep building its lineup. It's why they moved the Law and Order series with Chris Maloney, Organized Crime, over to that streamer, because it was on NBC for the last 4 years, but they moved it over there because they wanted to continue it, and it gives Law and Order an established name, and it helps Peacock in the long run, and NBC Universal. So. And they've also got a couple of shows that are... There's one show in particular that's very intriguing they've got in the works, with Steph Curry and Adam Paley starring. It's a comedy series called Mr. Throwback. I'm kind of curious to see what Steph Curry could do as an actor in general. Can he be funny? Who knows? We'll see what happens there. And I'm definitely looking forward to see what they do with this follow-up to The Office. I'm really excited to see where they take it. Got some good people already involved in it, so I'm more than excited to see where it goes from there. So, with that said, moving on to the next story. So quite honestly, I would have had no interest in the story had I not seen the first movie that they did based off this character a couple years ago, and I was actually kind of surprised by it. But Samantha Lorraine is putting on her backpack to play Dora the Explorer in a new live-action movie. The story comes from The Hollywood Reporter. The actress, best known for a key role in You Are So Not Invited to My Bar Mitzvah, which was an Adam Sandler movie on Netflix that came out a couple years ago. That was actually pretty good, by the way. Has been cast as the titular heroine of Nickelodeon Studios' new live-action Dora the Explorer feature being made by Paramount Plus and Nickelodeon. Alberto Belli, who directed Disney Plus's holiday feature The Naughty Nine and episodes of the Disney show Ultraviolet and Black Scorpion, is helming the new project that has a working title of Dora and the Search for Sol Dorado. Written by J.T. Billings, the script follows as Dora, her cousin Diego, and their new friends trek through perilous dangers of the Amazonian jungle in search of the ancient treasure of Sol Dorado in order to keep the powerful treasure out of enemy hands. Swiper, no swiping. It's literally what it says here in the description. Sol Dorado will be only the second time the adventurous Latina has been translated to the live-action world. Isabella Moner, also known as Isabella Mercer, plays the character in the 2019 movie directed by James Baldwin that was released theatrically. Dora, initially a long-running animated children's series that began on Nickelodeon in 2000 and is one of the Paramount's biggest and more profitable franchises. With its impact felt through multiple series, merchandising tie-ins, video games, and toys, Dora, a new preschool animated series, debuted on Paramount Plus in April, and a second season is already greenlit. So like I said, I never grew up with Dora the Explorer. I didn't really watch much of any of the show. I did watch a couple of Nick Jr. shows back in the day, like in the 90s, like, Eureka's Castle, Blue's Clues, Gullah Gullah Island, those those shows, but I never got around to Dora the Explorer, just because it was just past my time. And so I really didn't have much of an interest in Dora the Explorer to begin with. But when I heard about this movie, the original Dora and the Last City of Gold, and it had James Baldwin directing, who did The Muppets, Nicholas Stoller, who also wrote The Muppets and also did Forgetting Sarah Marshall, one of my favorite comedies. And then they had Benicio del Toro doing the voice of Swiper the Fox, and then Danny Trejo voicing Boots. I just felt to myself, this could be really weird and bizarre, but I had to check it out to see to see if this actually lived up to the craziness that I thought it was. And sure enough, it actually kind of did. I mean, it was a fun little adventure film, like a fun kids-style Indiana Jones adventure. I thought Isabella Moner was actually pretty good as Dora. I thought the ideas of it were very good. Seeing director James Baldwin and co-writer and Nicholas Stoller doing to Dora the Explorer, what they did with the Muppets, with the two movies they did, that was kind of fun. I like the little homages they paid to the show. It's a fun little movie. It's not one I watch on repeat over and over again, but I'm glad I got to see it when I did. Needless to say, I don't think this particular film is going to have that same magic that film did, but I don't know. You never really know. Sometimes you might be surprised. Maybe this director actually has a similar background to James Baldwin. I sincerely doubt it, but I don't know. There's a possibility there that it could be good, but maybe not. I don't know. But I don't know. Maybe it is just strictly but they are strictly kids adventure films, and for kids, the first one was fun. So anybody who saw that one and will probably see this one might, I don't know. They may get a kick out of it. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, like I said, nothing really more about that one in particular. I'm only bringing this up because I like the last Dora live action film they did. It was actually kind of fun. Not really expecting a whole lot, and coming out of it really, really surprisingly enjoying it for what it was. So yeah, new Dora the Explorer movie coming up. That's all I got for you on that one. So let's go ahead and move on to story number 3. Well, hey, boys and girls, it's time to hear another incredible story from America's favorite CEO scumbag. That is David Zaslav. And this week, Warner Brothers Discovery held their first quarter earnings conference call on Thursday, and the company said that they are now in the early stages of script development on new Lord of the Rings movies, which are anticipated to hit theaters in 2026. So 2 years from now, we're getting the first of a series of new Lord of the Rings movies, and we'll explore storylines yet to be told. I will bring this up in a second because it actually has something funny attached to that. So the first film in this new series of Lord of the Rings movies from New Line and Warner Brothers is called Lord of the Rings: The Hunt for Gollum. It has Andy Serkis set to star as Gollum again and also direct the feature. Zaslav said the director Peter Jackson and his longtime writing partner Fran Walsh and Philippa Bowens, writing partners, will be involved in every step of the way. Bowens and Walsh will write the screenplay. The deal covers 2 films in the franchise. Let's see, anything. Warner first said that it was developing new Lord of the Rings movies a little over a year ago, cutting a deal with rights holder Embracer Group AB to develop new films based off of J.R.R. Tolkien's book series. So, I said that there was something funny that actually came from this. Well, you notice that the title of the film, the first film they're doing, is called The Hunt for Gollum. And so The Hunt for Gollum is a very funny name for this particular film to have, because there was actually a fan film that came out back in 2009 that was put out on YouTube. And I've got this story right here. This also comes from the Hollywood Reporter. If Warner Brothers newly announced the Lord of the Rings movie idea, The Hunt for Gollum sounds a bit familiar, like fan fiction. That's because it already is. There is a 2009 fan-made film titled The Hunt for Gollum that you can watch below. On their website, of course. The film, directed by Chris Bosher, is rather ambitious. The Hunt for Gollum spans 39 minutes and has received plenty of praise from fans upon its release. Following Warner Brothers' announcement, the film was taken offline for many hours, and YouTube put up a notice saying Warner Brothers had filed a copyright claim against the fan movie and blocked it. Lord of the Rings fans reacted quite negatively to the takedown online, and early Friday the film was restored to YouTube. A studio source says the takedown request was done in error. Sure it was. And yeah, all those movies that they canceled, tax write-offs, and also the special effects of The Flash are bad. They're supposed to be bad, you know. If anybody believes that the takedown request was done in error, you are completely misguided big time. I mean, after what the studio has done over the past 2 years, it should not shock you that a studio saw this. A studio decided, we're going to take this down and hopefully nobody's going to notice it. They realized that, oh, people are going to notice it. Okay, back up you go. It's just like, they knew exactly what they were doing. I wouldn't be surprised if this idea that they've had for the last couple of years actually came from this particular project. In fact, it's going to be hilarious if we actually see this Hunt for Gollum movie, and it's literally what this short film is actually being. But I don't know. But who knows? Maybe it is an original story. But continuing on with the article here. The short tells presumably the same story that's going to be tackled in the upcoming feature film, which is being developed by producer Peter Jackson and his writing partner Fran Walsh and Philippa Bowens, who will be involved in every step of the way. Andy Serkis is on board to direct. We talked about it already. But the fan-made Hunt for Gollum is set during the opening act of The Fellowship of the Ring and fills in a quest that was only briefly discussed in Jackson's 2001 film. Gandalf, played by Patrick O'Connor in the short, meets with Aragorn, played by Adrian Webster, and asks him to hunt for Gollum to find out more about Frodo's magic ring. Aragorn has a series of adventures, traps and loses Gollum, and gets attacked by orcs in ring race. Gollum is recaptured by the elves of Mirkwood, and he's interrogated by Gandalf. Warner Brothers made the surprise Lord of the Rings announcement Thursday during its first quarter earnings conference. I did it again, earnings conference. But, yeah, so I don't really think that Warner Brothers should have done that in the first place, because you're already a scumbag studio. You've already become a scumbag university because you've hired a scumbag, and you still have him there, who has notoriously canceled projects that were nearing completion for nothing more than tax write-offs. I mean, you've done so many things in the last 2 years that this dude should have been fired by this point. So, taking this down just adds another level of scum and villainy to this guy's or to David Zaslav's tenure at Warner Brothers. And as soon as it's going to be great when that day finally comes, when Warner Brothers clearly has had enough of this asshole and just gets rid of him for good. That day can't come any sooner. I mean, but again, maybe this is a new idea. Maybe this is something that maybe they took inspiration from the short, but to go out there and just put a copyright claim on it when that thing has been out there for 15 years prior to making this announcement, like, just, yeah, it's not a good look for Warner Brothers right now. I mean, I'm hoping for the best for this movie, but this is not a good way to get some good promotion for your movie. It makes your film, this bad publicity. They say bad publicity is good publicity, and that may be right now. But when that movie comes out and if it literally looks like this short film, yeah, it's definitely not going to look good for Warner Brothers and Peter Jackson per se, that they actually decided to do this and basically rip this guy who made this short film off. But who knows? It's still a long ways away. We'll see what happens there. So that's a new Lord of the Rings movie. Let's go ahead and move on to story number 4. So aside from Kevin Durant, who's having a really good May right now, Paul Walter Hauser is having a really good couple of weeks. I mean, last week we talked about him signing on to the new Naked Gun movie, and he's also going to be in the Fantastic Four. He's got Inside Out 2 coming up this summer. And now, this week, news broke that he's going to be leading the charge of a new biopic about Michael Larson, who, the fascinating story about him on the time he was on Pressure Luck, and I'll tell you about that as soon as I get to the article here. This comes from Deadline Hollywood, and it says that Paul Walter Hauser will lead the cast of Pressure Luck, a pick based on the true story of an unemployed ice cream truck driver who won big on a 1980s game show. Set in 1984, the film follows Ohio resident Michael Larson, who steps onto the set of the game show Pressure Luck harboring a secret, the key to endless amounts of money, but his winning streak gets threatened when the executives in the control room start to uncover his real motivations, and they show a first image look of him, and I gotta say, man, that dude looks spot on like Michael Larson. I mean, if you watch the episodes of the show, and this image right here, you could definitely see that this guy clearly looks like Michael Larson, and it's just like, that's pitch perfect casting right there. Joining Hauser in an ensemble cast are Walton Goggins, David Strathairn, Maisie Williams, Halle Bennett, Shamir Anderson, David Rysdahl, Johnny Knoxville, Brian Garrity, Patty Harrison, Shawnette Renee Wilson, Lily Kay, James Wolk, Damian Young, and Ricky Rousset. Samir Olivios directs from a screenplay co-written by Maggie Briggs of Joyland. His company Plenty Good, who also did Chronicles of a Wandering Saint, is the producer, and the film is actually in post-production, so the film is pretty much done. So we're going to see it at some point, whether or not it's picked up by a major studio or not. Protagonist Pictures is handling the international rights, and CAA Media Finance representing the North American rights. So let's talk about... So this is good this is a really good casting decision on its own, but the story behind this is really, really fascinating, and I was wondering when they were actually going to do a story about this particular scandal. It was probably the biggest scandal that had been in daytime television, game show television, since the 21 scandal. But if you don't know the story about this is a really engaging storyline that you really have to really look at in full. There's been documentaries about this. There's a great documentary Game Show Network did about 20 years ago called Big Bucks, The Pressure Luck Scandal, which is a really good documentary that actually shows what exactly happened here. So how he was able to do it. So as I told you in the synopsis for this, Michael Larson was an Ohio man who was an ice cream truck driver, and he had a penchant for get-rich-quick scheme. So he's kind of like Fred Flintstone and Ralph Cramden from The Honeymooners. Like, he would study the game show Pressure Luck, which was very new at the time, and discovered that its random element was actually only 5 different patterns of light. And so he successfully auditioned and getting onto the show. He performed on the show on May 19th, 1984, and beat the show so dramatically he was accused by CBS of cheating. And after the network paid, he actually moved on to other endeavors, eventually fleeing from law enforcement under suspicion of fraud and dying and hiding in Epaka, Florida in 1994. So the strategy that he had was that, it started in November of 83 when he first watched Pressure Luck, and he saw that he was fascinated by it, so he bought a VCR and spent weeks analyzing the big board and came down to 2 conclusions. Firstly, the lighting patterns are moving in 5 different predetermined patterns and not randomly as advertised. So one of the most notable ones is when on one of the patterns it's if you're looking at the pressure luck board of what is it, 6, 10, 15 of 20 squares, you would see that there would be this pattern, like it'd be 2, 12, 1, 9, and 4. And 4 would usually be the one that usually would have the big money and the spin, and he would find these patterns in there. And the documentary I was talking about, the Big Bucks documentary, really delves into that more, and I definitely recommend you check that out. But secondly, Larson never once saw a whammy in squares 4 and 8. He only had one whammy in that game, in the game itself, and that was at the beginning of the game. But he never saw a whammy once in 4 or 8, and they've never put it in there, as far as I know, ever since after that too. So he spent the next few weeks owning his skill and using the VCR pause button to practice his timing. And he spent the last of his money flying out to Ohio, from Ohio to Hollywood, and eventually got up on Pressure Luck. And he actually, it's funny because he told interviewers about being unemployed, his bus ride to Hollywood out of love for the show, and being unable to afford a birthday gift for his 6-year-old daughter, and buying a dress shirt at a thrift store down the street for only 65 cents. And so the producers were impressed by him and actually brought him onto the show, and that's when the chaos began to ensue. Because in the first game, like I said, he hit a whammy once in the first game on week 1, and then he basically and then after that he never hit another whammy after that. Like, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now. It was not until the second half of the game when people started to realize that something was up here, because they have a list here of how many times he hit those specific squares. Like 55% of the time he would hit square 4. There would be one time where he hit square 6, and the second biggest one after 4 was 8, which he hit 17 times, which was 39% of the times he actually hit. So in between hitting 4 and 8, he had like over $100,000 worth of stuff that he won on there, and it was so big. It was so big that CBS had no choice but to air the games in 2 episodes. Like, one episode actually aired on a Friday in June of '84, and then they had to air the second episode on a Monday in June. And it's just like, just imagine what that was like back then, to know that, game shows don't usually leave you with cliffhangers, but this was like the first one to ever actually do that. So when the game ended, he ended up winning, of course, and he ended up winning over $110,000 worth of cash and prizes, including trips to Kauai and also the Bahamas, a sailboat. And the 2 other contestants actually were, the one contestant that was left to him, Ed Long, was actually a contestant from the last show. So he won the money that he won from the previous episode. And the contestant next to him, a woman, Janie Latrice, did not win anything because she was a new contestant on there. So it was a very, very interesting time for that show, because there was never anything. They never had anything like that happen before. And this is not the first time they've tried to make a movie off of this storyline. I mean, originally there was going to be a film with Bill Murray playing Michael Larson back in the 2000 with Nicolas Cage as one of the producers on it, but that never really went anywhere. So to actually get to see this on the big screen, it really leaves a lot of potential of what this could be. It's a really engaging story overall. Just this fascinating story about this guy who studied this game show and found out the secret to winning a ton of money, and lo and behold, here he goes. This guy breaks the system, and it's really unprecedented how that moment really changed that show in particular, because now those patterns that they usually had were not there anymore, and so nobody could really do exactly what they said that was what this guy did back in the day. And it's just fascinating stuff in general. And they actually did bring everybody back for a memorial episode when they had the whammy all-new Pressure Luck. So they got the 2 contestants that were with Michael Larson, Ed Long and Janie Latrice, and actually played against Larson's brother James Larson. And honestly, I remember that episode. I just don't remember how that one particularly ended. I don't remember who ended up winning that episode, but I gotta find that episode at some point. I'm sure it's online somewhere, but it's a fascinating story overall, and it's just one that I feel like could make for a really good movie. Hopefully it turns out to be pretty good, because I'm really excited to see what they do with this. And Walter Hauser is becoming one of those great rising actors out there. So yeah, that's that story. So let's go ahead and move on to Kind of a story from last week that we talked about involving Paramount. So we kind of already delved into this on last week's show, but we never really delved into what would actually happen if Sony and Apollo end up getting their hands on Paramount, because it looks like the Skydance deal, they're still handling negotiations. However, Paramount is opening up the negotiations with Sony as well. And the New York Times actually had a story that you can only see if you are subscribed to the New York Times, but Deadline has a Cliff Notes version of it here. And says, so should Sony and Apollo get their hooks into Paramount Global, the strategy would be keep theatrical release output steady between both studios, not reduced, while cutting the more burdensome part of the conglomerate, auctioning off CBS to linear channels like MTV and Paramount Plus streaming services. The news about theatrical output is per Deadline tonight, while the New York Times reports earlier that Sony and Apollo had plans to cut Paramount's TV assets in the $26 billion bid for the entertainment company. Per the New York Times, Sony hasn't shared the plan with Paramount and its consigliaries, who decided on May 4th to hold separate talks at Sony and Apollo and continue negotiations with David Ellison's Skydance and Redbird. Talks have eased between Paramount and Skydance, though the latter remains interested. Many have pointed out that a Sony merger with Paramount would put the former under scrutiny, with the FCC as foreign-owned conglomerates aren't allowed to own U.S. broadcast stations. Per Deadline sources, those in Hollywood, including exhibitors, fear a Sony-Paramount merger, many having PTSD of the 2019 Disney-Fox merger, and the reduced output of films which have resulted from that. Across 20th Century Studios, Searchlight, and Disney, there's only 12 titles for 2024, with wide releases around 83 titles this year for an entire industry. Exhibition cannot take another loss from a major studio. That would mean roughly another 10 big titles gone from the marketplace. Circuits are already scrambling by post-strikes and COVID. Big Sony is putting out 15 movies this year, and Paramount another 10. Sources tell Deadline that the plan wouldn't be for a Sony Paramount merger to scale back, rather than up to compete with the streamers. That vision being around 20 wide releases a year. They wouldn't follow in the footsteps of Disney Fox's practice. At least that's the plan right now. It's the main reason why Sony is going after Paramount, to make a 1+1 studio equation equaling 4. Last year, Paramount and Sony respectively grossed $2 billion at the global box office. If combined, their outputs would equal $4 million up there, with Universal's worldwide result of $4.9 billion and Disney's $4.8 worldwide. Meanwhile, neither Sony or Paramount have inked formal non-disclosure agreements or began any crackling of the books, a formality that could take weeks. The Sony-Paramount combo will see the former Culver City lot operating the combined entity as a joint venture, with Apollo taking a small stake, which could be sold down the road to Sony or another buyer. Marketing and distribution ops would be merged. Some close to the Paramount believe that there is a third option, that the Sherry Redstone goes at it alone, and it doesn't make a deal with Sony Apollo or Skydance. How long that lasts remains in question. Sony is known as an arms dealer of content, licensing more movies and TV shows to Netflix and Disney. The studio has a rich pay-one deal with Netflix. The strategy would remain unchanged with the addition of Paramount. The idea that the Melrose Avenue's Lots OTT service would be unloaded to Comcast's Peacock or Warner Bros. Discovery Max. I'm trying to see if I can find what they said about the TV stations. Okay, I finally found it. I mean, it was hard. Good lord, it was hard to actually find the part I wanted to talk about here. But Sony and Apollo expects there could be more logical buyers for Paramount's assets. Warner Bros. Discovery could be a possible suitor for CBS, while TV station groups like Nexstar and Tegna would be natural buyers for CBS's owned and operated TV stations. That would also mean that Nickelodeon and MTV would essentially be sold in the same way, too, which would be very interesting if Nickelodeon ends up at a place like Warner Brothers, or maybe even Universal. Maybe Universal, especially considering that they own a majority of... That's where you can find a lot of the Nickelodeon stuff at, but that's kind of what the situation would be if Sony ends up actually winning this in the long run. I mean, it felt like for the longest time Skydance was the viable option, which it could still be, but it's just interesting that you have that out there where, you know, people are making the assumption now that Sony is clearly, if this actually happens, I mean, Sony's even talking about selling the Paramount lot if they are actually able to end up winning this in the long run, winning the battle in the long run here. But just very interesting, just a very, very interesting situation going on here, and it could go any way, shape, or form. Either way, I think it'll end up being somewhat of a disaster in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think it'll be any different than how Disney and Fox started off and how they eventually turned the tide around a little bit here in the 5 years since that merger. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to turn out, but like I said last week, somebody's probably going to buy them within the next month. So So a story that we'll keep you updated on here, of course. So with that said, on to the next story. Just when I think I know when the fall schedules are going to be announced, NBC pulls the rug out on me, because on Friday they went ahead and unveiled their fall schedule ahead of their upfront presentation tomorrow. Fox will announce their fall schedule tomorrow, as well as ABC later in the week. And I guess CW2 is still technically a network, but NBC's fall schedule is out, and it doesn't, and kind of like with CBS, it doesn't look that different compared to its current lineup. The Voice is still on Monday and Tuesdays. The 3 Chicago dramas are on Wednesday. Law and Order is still on Thursday. It's a business-as-usual lineup, as I'm looking at the story here from The Hollywood Reporter. So let's run down the shows that they have here. NBC will have 4 comedies on the air in the fall, the first time that's happened since the pre-pandemic season of 2019 and 2020. 2 of them are newcomers. You have a mockumentary series called St. Denis Medical, which is a holdover from last year's development cycle from Superstore creator Justin Spitzer, which stars David Alec Greer and Wendy McClendon-Covey, and it will pair with Night Court on Tuesday nights. And you have the Reba McEntire-led Happy's Place, which will join Lopez vs. Lopez on Friday nights. The network's other new series for the fall is the medical drama Brilliant Minds, which stars Zachary Quinto as a neurologist leading a team of doctors who explore the human mind and is inspired by the life and works of physician and author Oliver Sacks. Brilliant Minds will follow The Voice on Monday nights, while last fall's 10 p.m. Monday show The Irrational moves one night over to Tuesday. Second-year drama Found will follow Law & Order SVU on Thursdays, now that Law & Order Organized Crime is moving to Peacock. Later in the season, NBC will premiere the 10-part nature series The Americas, narrated by Tom Hanks. The Years in the Making series, which was greenlit in January 2020, will premiere on February 23rd. Also on deck is a crime drama called The Hunting Party, starring Manifest's Melissa Roxborough, returning unscripted show Deal or No Deal Island, and a new competition series titled Destination X. NBC will also celebrate the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live with a 3-hour primetime special on February 16th. The network also has 2 drama pilots under consideration in Suits LA, a companion show to the former U.S. network series turned streaming juggernaut, and Grosse Pointe Garden Society from Good Girls executive producer Jenna Bans and Bill Krebs. So the schedule basically goes like this. Monday nights, The Voice and Brilliant Minds. Tuesday, St. Denis Medical and Night Court are the comedy block there, followed by The Voice and then The Irrational. Wednesday, Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD. Thursday, Law & Order SVU, and then Found. Friday, Happy's Place, Lopez vs. Lopez, and Dateline. Saturday, the Big Ten kickoff and the Big Ten Saturday night, plus Notre Dame football. And then Sunday night, of course, Football Night in America and Sunday Night Football. And there could be more to be announced tomorrow with NBC looking like they're in prime position to get the NBA. Maybe not, I don't think it's this year, but it would be the next year. But they're closing in on getting the NBA rights from TNT, which would just add another black mark to David Zaslav's tenure overall as the head of Warner Brothers. But it's looking like NBC's getting closer and closer to maybe going in on the NBA at this point. But again, it just has to wait to see what happens with how the negotiating works out. But other than there's no, and unlike last week with CBS, there's no previews out there. Those will probably come out tomorrow. So we just have to wait to see what happens then. But other than that, though, that's pretty much all we have for the NBC fall schedule. I mean, there's not that much more I could really add to that per se, because like I said, I don't have any previews to actually look at here, so I can't really tell you what the new shows are going to look like until tomorrow. Not much more to say about that. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic of discussion. This isn't really anything in the news in particular or anything of noteworthiness, but there's something I noticed here in Western Pennsylvania the last week. It's been a weird week here. I mean, I live in a place where we don't usually get a whole lot of wicked, wild, severe weather, but this week it's been nothing but tornadoes. We've had like 3 different tornadoes over the course of this week, and it's just like, we don't usually get that. These are like strong tornadoes too, like EF1s, EF2s. It's just like we don't usually live in an area that has a lot of tornadic activity, but good lord. I mean, this week has been really, really rough on that. It's just like, it just never stops too. And I always don't like when they always show like the National Weather Service map in particular, where they show like the areas where there's a likely chance of severe weather. Every time that they show that, it's never this week, it was never where the tornadoes actually were. Like, it would always be like, down south or just in Ohio and all that. And like, there was never any indication that there was going to be any severe tornadoes, let alone severe weather. But just been that kind of a week. But that's not what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about what happened with what's happening this week in the world of Pittsburgh sports, because it was a big sports week in particular, especially for the Pittsburgh Pirates, because Paul Skenes, the number one pick from last year's Major League Baseball draft, made it up to the big leagues this week. He played on Saturday for the first time. And if there's anybody here that's not listening from Western Pennsylvania, be glad that you didn't listen to the radio this week or watch the sports show, because everybody could not shut the hell up about Paul Skenes coming to the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, to play. He's a top prospect. Everyone was saying like he's the best pitching prospect since Steven Strasburg, And it's just like, yeah, but people would not shut up about it. And it's just like, yeah, the guy is good, and yeah, he played very well for 4.5 innings, and then Derek Shelton, because he's a head coach in Pittsburgh sports. That means that he has no choice, but there's no choice but to take him out. Guess what happened when he took him out? Pirates are up 6-1 in the fifth inning, and then the Bears scored. The Chicago Cubs scored 5 runs in a row and tied the game at 6-6. And then they had the rain delay, and you think, okay, rain delay. It's a couple of hours, so maybe the Cubs are starting to die off. No, they scored 2 more runs after that in the fifth inning. It's just like, so that's 7 runs scored in the fifth inning after they took Paul Skenes out, because everybody else who plays for the Pirates in the pitching unit is complete garbage right now, and it's just like, yeah, they won yesterday, but they barely won. Like, I'm sorry, like, I don't like the Pirates. I really do not like the Pirates whatsoever, because they're a horribly run baseball team. They're just a horribly run team owned by an owner that is clearly out of his gut. That is clearly so more about the money than actually building a team to win championships with. Because we all know what's going to happen with Paul Skenes down the road. He's going to play well here. He's going to get to a point where he's going to be so popular that he's going to have that every other team is going to want to get him when he enters free agency, and he's going to win a championship with another team not named the Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm sorry. It's just like, it just gets, it's just, and it wouldn't be going off like this except everybody in this town would not shut up about it. Not only sports media, but the fans. The fans are so, like, I love this town, but some of the people in this town really get on my nerves when it comes to sports teams, because they're so gullible, and they just can't see the blindingly obvious. I've watched these teams in this town long enough to know what exactly is going to happen at this point with every single one of them. Like, every time they lose a game or they win a game, when I come home from work, I'm listening to the radio, and they always get these guys on the radio, these fans on the radio who are like these bitter, these clearly old guys who still think that the game of baseball is the greatest sport ever. It's America's pastime. Baseball is not that great of a sport. I'm sorry. I'll take basketball or football any day of the week over freaking baseball, because it's a boring sport. Yeah, I'll go to PNC Park and watch the game for the sake of watching, to see maybe they'll win, but for the beautiful view of the city, the view of the city alone is worth it to go to these games. There's nothing fun about watching a baseball game. There's one guy that always comes on the radio after Pirates games, and you can tell that he's clearly an 89-year-old man who has no idea how the world is, how this game works, and how the Pirates run their business, because the Pirates don't care about ever winning another World Series. No. They don't care about that. They just want the money that's being brought in, because they know that as soon as one of their players on there becomes a superstar, that's enough for trade capital, so they can go ahead and get players that are lesser than the people that they just traded for. I mean, it's just, I know, because yesterday everybody went crazy. Is hyping up this guy Paul Skenes' first day like it's going to be that big of a deal, and it's a big deal, of course, because it's his first time in the major leagues. But like, everyone was just spilling it up to this point where you build up something so much, at some point it becomes overhype. And when overhype happens, something bad is bound to happen. And sure enough, because the coaching staff of the Pirates are idiots, they decide 4 innings is more than enough for Paul Skenes. Let's go ahead and bring out these lesser guys who have clearly shown since the season began that they are not good at holding holding down the turf that Paul Skenes helped to put together. As soon as those other pitchers came in, the Cubs got going. They swept the series. They won today. The Pirates only won 1 game of that series because of Paul Skenes. I don't think it's not because that he was the reason why they lost. He was the reason why they were winning. I don't know. I don't know much about baseball to begin with, but I just know that I've had a terrible Pittsburgh Pirates team for the last 20 years to watch, and just I can't take it anymore. I just can't take Pittsburgh sports media in general anymore because they have set these stories up so much. They oversell Paul Skenes so much. They have to affect the Steelers too. There was a story earlier this week. A source from 93.7 The Fan says that Najee Harris is purposefully declined his 5th-year option so he can go play for somebody else. And there was also trade talks too between the Cowboys and Najee Harris, which were later debunked by the Dallas Cowboys media. And the agent had to shut down the rumors about what the source said about Najee Harris purposely declining the 5th-year option because he's going to play somewhere else. It's just they go after Najee Harris not because of anything, not because he's a bad person or anything, but no, they go after him because he's a first-round running back, and in this town, it's just the first-round running back, they're never successful at all. I mean, clearly the Steelers made a big mistake by drafting him instead of somebody of note. You want to pick this. They want to bitch about something because they have nothing else to bitch about. Because they do this every single time with players that this city loves. The real fans love. We love Juju Smith-Schuster around here, but no, because he's on social media all the time, and he's a fun guy. He doesn't care about the game and all that. He's a distraction for the team. Really, he's won a Super Bowl with Kansas City since then. Chase Claypool, he's just as bad as Juju Smith. Worse, get him out of here. If you put it just happens so much in this town that we overhype these players to a certain point that if they are not literally getting us a championship within the next week or so, they're automatically considered a pariah. And with Najee Harris, that just frustrated me so much that this town wants to get rid of him so much. Not the town, but sports media in general, because it's just no, he's a first-round running back. So what? Barry Sanders was a first-round running back. Ezekiel Elliott was a first-round running back. Leonard Fournette was a first-round running back. Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are first-round running backs. You don't hear anybody in those towns saying, "Oh, let's get rid of these guys because they're first-round running backs." No, they like that they're there because you know what? Some of them have won championships. Some of them know what it takes to be on a team that is capable of knowing what they have in their roster, and the people in sports media don't usually give a crap. I don't know if that's the case with all of them, but still, it's just that's what I hate so much about this town, because they want to go back to the old school days of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and you can't do that. You just can't do that with the way that the leagues have evolved since then. All these other teams in the league, I'm talking about in baseball, hockey, and football, have had success because they've evolved with a modern day system. The Pirates, the Penguins, and the Steelers have not. And I've just noticed it this year with the Steelers, and I've noticed it with the Penguins as well because, of course, of Ron Hextall's brilliant job of turning the Penguins into the Philadelphia 76ers last year, and now Kyle Dubas, not off to the good start with the Penguins either. But it's just, I'm so sick and tired of Pittsburgh sports media. I just really am, because they don't care about us winning championships and all that. No, they want to stick to the basics of how things have worked, because it's worked in the past. The Steelers, though, they don't need to change anything as long as Mike Tomlin keeps it up with the winning season records and all that. That's the point where it's just, that's all that really matters in this town. Yeah. While you have that mentality, Kansas City is in a dynasty right now, winning 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls, was winning 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls. So, yeah, you tell me which direction you would want to see this team going in. Do you want to see them going in the direction of the Chiefs, or do you want to see them keep retaining the same predictability and formality that they're going to have all the time? Like, I know I'm just kind of rambling on at this point, but it gets on my nerves how much I can't stand some of the sports teams in this town. Like I said, I love this city, but just the way that these teams are put together and the way that these sports media guys just keep pretending like it's still the good old days when these teams are clearly getting out of touch. They don't know what the hell they're trying to do. The teams are either too stubborn to change anything, too conservative to change anything, or too greedy to change anything. And really, it's why I can't get really excited for this. Like, if Paul Skenes is really the key that's going to lead the Pirates to a championship in the next couple of years, so be it. If Russell Wilson and Justin Fields actually is the thing that gets the Steelers back to the Super Bowl, then so be it. You know, if Sidney Crosby is somehow managed to regain his former glory and the Penguins actually get younger and they win another Stanley Cup, so be it. I'll be happy for it, but it's just like, right now, it's really hard for me to get excited about these Pittsburgh sports teams, especially with this last week when everyone was overhyping Paul Skenes to the point where if he failed miserably, it would have been one of the greatest disasters in the history of sports. But because he did well enough yesterday, it's just going to continue going forward. Like, Paul Skenes is going to be the future of this city. Like, he's going to run this city. Yeah, he's going to run this city and run away with the money that another team is going to give him, where he'll win another World Series. He ain't winning the World Series with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Just, I don't know. It's just like, I know this has been just rambling and all that, but it just kind of gets on my nerves, especially with the way that this city just overhypes everything and tries to get people out that clearly were not the reasons why these teams were so terrible. It's just, you know, another one, Jake Gensel. Like, get rid of Jake Gensel. He's the reason why the Penguins haven't been playing so well. Yeah, Jake Gensel right now is in the middle of keeping the Carolina Hurricanes alive in the postseason in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yeah, he's not the reason why the Penguins didn't make the playoffs last year. It's the coaching staff. Like there has to be that point when one of these teams has to go and say, enough is enough. We need a new mentality. We need a new face in this place. And I just don't know when it's going to happen, if it's ever going to happen in the next couple of years. Just, it feels like we're stuck right now. We're stuck in Pittsburgh sports purgatory right now. These teams are going to be just as mediocre and bland as they have been the last couple of years, and nothing is really going to change that until somebody comes in and says, we need a new voice to come in here and change the entire course and the mentality of the city around. Just, again, just ramblings, but I just had to get that off my chest, so let's go ahead and end this on a hot show on a high note. Let's go ahead and take a look at some recommendations, and then we'll get on out of here. So really, there's only one major new recommendation this week that I obviously got to recommend to you, and that is, of course, Dune Part 2, which finally comes out on Blu-ray this week. Came out in theaters a couple months ago, and what more can I say about this movie that I haven't already said already? It's one of the best movies of the year. It's a great sequel that expands on the story from the previous movie. It makes for a film that is really incredible to watch, a visual achievement, a story achievement. It's a really damn good movie, and quite frankly, if you haven't seen it, definitely go and check it out. It comes out on Blu-ray this week, and yeah, that's really all the other recommendations here. There's a couple of re-releases of stuff like, you know, Gravity, Magic Mike, you know, Mad Max Fury Road's getting a new steelbook in celebration of the new movie Furiosa. American Sniper is celebrating its 10th anniversary with a new steelbook release. The Lair of the White Worm excuse me. The Lair of the White Worm comes out this week in a nice-looking steelbook. Killer Clowns from Outer Space comes out on 4K for the first time by Shout Factory. There's a couple of other choices here and there, but the big one this week, obviously, is Dune Part 2. And that's really the big new release to recommend this week in terms of all the new releases coming out. So other than that, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Reviewing Network Live. So thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, you like what you heard, hit the like and subscribe button. Check out the last episode we did as well, some of the other episodes we've done. I do recommend it. I do recommend our show. Obviously, I recommend it because I'm the one working on it. But what was that even like? What was the point of even that thing? See, that last rambling I just had really has messed up my brain. I got to stop. So Let me rephrase that. Let me try that again. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, hit the like and subscribe button, and check out some of the other videos we've done here on this channel. We do trailer reactions, we do Time About the Movies clipless versions, we do other things in particular. It's just, it's just what we do here. And check out our other channel as well, the main channel. We do a lot more over there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm tired. It's been a long day, so I'm going to go on ahead and get out of here. So thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll see you guys next week. And until then, we are out. Oh, man.